But after, I felt great. And I feel good right now, too. But that could be from the sleep. And speaking of sleep, that is what we're going to talk about today with our guest, Todd Anderson.
Well, I'm really excited because I know that I could do better at this. I feel like I've started to pay more attention to it. But I'm excited to learn a lot from him.
Yeah, me too. Let's go.
All right, let's do it.
Live from Times Square, it's Pop Recovery Systems, led by visionary Laura Alexis. Pop Recovery Systems, redefining surgical recovery with bariatric expert Dr. Eric Smith. Innovating surgical preparation and recovery, Pop Recovery Systems blends nutrition, mental health, and wellness.
Breaking through the noise and changing an industry. Join Laura Alexis and Dr. Eric Smith on the Pop Culture Podcast.
We are so super stoked. Today's episode is going to be full of fun and new information I bet you've never heard before. We have former NFL fullback, gone dream extraordinaire, building an empire on helping people learn how to optimize their sleep. I know I found it interesting when I first heard about it a year ago, but there's just so much to unfold in this episode with Mr. Todd Anderson. Thank you for being here today, sir.
Thanks for having me. Pumped to be here.
What's up, Todd? How are you, man?
Good. How you doing?
Good to meet you.
You too.
Yeah, you guys have never met each other before.
No,
I just read about him. I haven't physically met him.
We're just headphone brothers, but the wired
right.
headphones.
She'll figure it out eventually. She'll come around.
Yeah.
I was like, see, Eric, I know popular, handsome people too.
Appreciate it.
Wait, Laura, don't you know me? Come on.
Other than
you put the ball on the tee.
Of course. Now, so something I didn't know until I Googled you, Todd, was that you were a former a football player, and I remember when we first met, so Eric, Todd and I first met through a mutual friend. She was just helping us get Pop out there, and Todd graciously agreed to do a live with me. And I mean, you looked like some kind of athlete, but you even have like the jawline of an athlete.
Yeah.
What kind of jawline does it take to play sports there, Laura? I think we should go this direction for 30 minutes.
Well, in my mind, there's
what an athlete's supposed to look like.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying.
But then we uncovered a lot of what you've been doing for the last years in dream and sleep optimization. And I actually ended up doing a deeper rabbit hole research because of what we do at Pop. Yeah. And I just thought it was extremely interesting. And I've been watching you from afar. You have a new podcast out where Eric, so I'm not sure if you knew this, but he has people sit in this hot box during his podcast, and the heat gets like hotter and hotter. Mm-hmm. I'll never do it, but I was thinking you could probably do it, Eric.
I could probably do that better than I could do like hot yoga. I've never been brave enough to try the hot yoga.
It's much hotter than that.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Oh my God.
But at least I'm not having to be contorted in a awkward position. But I don't know. Maybe you're challenging me.
That. It's tough.
I'm sure it is. How long is your podcast? Like 2 minutes?
30 minutes. It starts at 160. It ends at 2:30. I just did one today. With the band Judah and the Lion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Judah's my neighbor. Fun fact.
Okay. So. Very cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Well, that's definitely some stuff that I'm interested in to talk about. But I did not know that. I knew the science that you're very interested in addition to sleep and everything else. But I did not know that you did your podcast with that platform.
It kind of all came from that concept. I've just always, I love selling it for the health side, but then you have such great conversations because you can't have your phone and like you're very present, right? So that's kind of where the idea came from. But then we decided to gamify it a little bit. But it's been cool because we just started. We've only had like 7 episodes, but we've had like a wide variety of people. Like we had like Mike Posner and then like Sarah Blakely and like so it's like very different avenues.
Sure.
but it's funny just to see how people react in that environment.
That's very cool. I'm definitely going to check that out.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, you're either going to be like, I can do that, or like me, like, I'm never doing that.
It's called Beat the Heat. Beat the Heat is the name of the podcast.
Yeah, Beat the Heat. Yep.
Laura, if you ever see me on that podcast and you see the little blur out screen 3 minutes into it where it's like they've lost connection, I was like, please.
Yeah.
No, you're too competitive for that.
Shortest time is 17 minutes so far. So.
Wow.
The longest time is 17 minutes?
That was the shortest. That was
the shortest.
That was Caitlin Bristow. She was the Bachelorette back in the day.
Oh, okay.
But then Hannah Brown, who was also the Bachelorette, she made it the entire time. So little Bachelorette Nation competition going on.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like
I'm thinking of a whole new concept now.
Yeah.
Bachelorette in a hot box.
Yep.
I feel like you would stay longer, Eric, just to like prove a point. Like,
Absolutely.
People get super competitive.
I would not let somebody see me fail. I might struggle off camera.
You'd be surprised. I mean, with the Heat,
sometimes you can't help it.
Yeah. There's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
Like we had Michael Chandler on, who he just fought on Saturday, UFC like champion, and he didn't make it.
Wow.
And you would think for sure, because he cut to weight in the sauna, like one of the toughest guys in the world. But the Heat's a different beast.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to like the beginning of Todd Anderson before the sports career, before you started this, movement with sleep optimization and now recovery optimization and all that great stuff. Where did all of that stem from? Like when did you know that this health and wellness lifestyle is going to be my life? And did you ever struggle with that earlier on?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like weirdly enough, it's kind of sparked my interest and my obsession with like the body was being like an overweight kid, I would say. I was chubby and, growing up, I'm 36. So like the education and what was healthy and just like that world was very unknown, right? Like food pyramid, there's a lot of different philosophies, but,
unknown or wrong.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And so, I was insecure to the point where like, I would have excuses ready for this. I hated the summer. I have excuses for pool parties, but I started lifting in 6th grade for football, which is pretty early. And I started to get stronger and feel better and look a little better. And, that really gave me confidence, right? It started to kind of change how I thought about myself. I got better at sports and that just kind of grew into an obsession. And like that just continued to progress. And I got more confidence. I got better at sports and they all like, it was this wheel of multiple things, just so many positive benefits from, it's stemming mostly from lifting at that point. Right. And so, as I got deeper into my athletic career and the same journey, right, like I still struggle sometimes with the whole confidence issue. I think when you're a kid and you deal with some of those things, they'll never go away. But I think it's okay sometimes that like oftentimes people start to work out and it's kicked off by some aesthetic goal or confidence or not loving the way they look. And I think that's totally okay. I don't think it's, whatever gets the ball rolling. So if I'm being honest, that's kind of how it started. And then, I loved like that world so much that I started after I played football. I continued working with athletes and high performers. And that's kind of, and eventually, as an athlete, coach, trainer, whatever, your goal is like, how do I make the biggest impact on performance or quality of life in the shortest amount of time? And I quickly realized it wasn't working out. It wasn't nutrition. It was sleep. Like if you fix someone's sleep, they're going to be better at whatever they're doing, whether it's playing in a Super Bowl or being a parent. And nobody was talking about it. I mean, that was, almost 10 years ago. And I just felt like there was this missing gap where we had this thing that's starting to really be studied that impacts every single aspect of health, wellness, longevity that no one was really talking about it to the extent it needed to be talked about. So kind of went down this journey and I got to spend time with some amazing sleep doctors and sleep psychologists that really put things in perspective. And from there, I just like went on a path of learning as much as I could and eventually creating products that kind of support that.
I love
Yeah, very cool. I think in modern times, there's a lot more awareness, obviously, on the importance of sleep. I think there's a whole different concept that I'm interested to get your take on, because I think in the age of social media, there's obviously the pluses and the minuses, right?
Yep.
But there's a platform and an opportunity for people to sit down and educate about health and wellness that really doesn't have an appealing space with a placard above a door on a street, like a traditional, say, doctor's office, right?
Yep.
It's not covered by insurance, so it has a limited market. There's not a guaranteed payer. So you can get on social media, and there's some really smart people out there that are educating people on what many people may call new age medicine, or, off the market medicine, and what I believe should be the foundational component of health and wellness.
Yeah.
I saw a quote the other day, and I if I think of who it was, I want to make sure I give him credit. But to the just, what he was saying is, before we sit down and talk to a patient about their weight, their diabetes, their hypertension, their depression, their anxiety, do we ever stop and say, how are you sleeping? Are you on a good multivitamin? Where are you sourcing your food from? And are they whole foods before we go to the next step? Now, if you tried to set up practice as a physician and did that, only the educated, wealthy people would probably keep showing up. Mm-hmm. And many of them would stop showing up because they have to pay for it themselves. And we all are based on instant gratification, right? We as humans, we're gauged on, I was listening to a podcast this morning. We're gauged on we want an instant reward for our habit. We're not really into that long-term result from that. From your standpoint, you're not a physician, but yet you bring so much input to health and wellness. What's your take on that? Because I think it becomes a conflict of interest. There's a lot of physicians like, well, that's all way out there. Now you've got people bashing the seed oil naysayers. You've got people bashing the food dyes. Now it's become this popular conversation. Now, we just need to get down to the nitty gritty, and we just need to talk about the basics. But this is the basics, isn't it?
Honestly, I would take it back one step further. Like if I would take it back to if you want to really get into someone's health and wellness, it's how are your relationships, and do you feel purpose in your life? Because very few times, if those two things are in place, does someone's health fall apart, right? Because that starts a cascade of issues. And when we look at the science, as much as some of this stuff seems far out there, I think even if you follow the science, you'll end up in the same place. When you look at the number one longevity predictor, it's the health and the depth of your relationships, right? So I think you have to follow that path. And as much as if physicians, there's many physicians that have the same train of thought, but I think we're in a place where we've created this system, and I don't think anything's malicious. I think it's just come to a point where
I agree.
They're trying to treat what's in front of them, and you're playing the odds of what the willingness is of patients and the majority of the population. So I think it's very hard, right? Like when you're trying to have the most, as anybody, right, and a physician is no exception. When you're sitting across from someone and you're trying to help them, and whatever it is, you could be a personal trainer. Your goal is, all right, how do I have the highest chances of success? And I think part of it is as a population, what we're willing to do. So then it creates this culture of, 99% of people aren't willing to make some of these behavior changes and lifestyle changes. So I'm going to treat the thing that's most impactful. So I think it is, it's hard. Like it's a hard balance. And I think, but more and more, I will say, I think people are realizing some of this holistic, very like foundational level thinking is really the root of all this stuff. It isn't like you're saying, it's not, the nitty gritties of getting into different ailments and disease and all this stuff. Like that stuff starts much more at the foundational level with honestly how you feel about yourself and how you feel about what you're doing in the world. And I think sleep oftentimes is actually where that stuff pops up. The majority of the time is people think they have a sleep problem because they're waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and they can't fall back asleep. But they're waking up and thinking about all these things that they have anxiety about, that they hate their job, that they don't have good relationships, they're worried, and that's not a sleep problem. Right. That's a much more foundational problem in their life.
Yeah, that's interesting because, I think that's a question a lot of people ask is, well, I don't sleep well. I wake up at 2:00 in the morning, and if they leave out my mind's racing about stuff, now they're getting worked up for sleep apnea. Now they're getting worked up for medications to help them sleep. And
well,
look,
my first question is, how do you know 2:00 in the morning?
Right. Right.
Because that kind of shows that that means you're immediately going to your phone.
Right. And as a physician, I feel like I can raise these questions because I'm not necessarily picking on physicians, but if I were seen as that way, I'm picking on my own. Right.
Yeah.
And I think any day when big pharma is involved, there's place for medications. There's real pathology that we treat. And everybody who has bad diabetes, or even everybody who has obesity, it's not 100% self-inflicted. There's multiple factors that are involved. But at the end of the day, when big pharma is involved, they can always produce a study that is going to support their medication because they have a lot riding financially on that study. Yep. When someone says, omit a product from your diet or improve the sleep in your daily routine, and there's not a singular person that controls that market, whether it be the product that you sleep on, whether it be the environment that you're in, whether it be an aroma that you expose yourself to before you go to sleep, whether it be some head training that you do before you lay down, there's not one person that's going to make a lot of money. So there's no interest in doing a study that's going to seem as powerful as a study of somebody who takes an Ambien, for example.
I know. We're literally self-funding some studies right now with some of the sleep stuff. And it's wild, the studies that haven't been done in the sleep world, because like you said, there's no beneficiary on some of this stuff.
Right. Laura and I talked about supplements one time, and she said, well, what would you be your recommendation? I'm like, well, if you're waiting on that data, man, don't hold your breath. Yeah. You have to be educated. You have to evaluate it. But I get so frustrated when I see the medical community come back when they maybe someone's suggesting eliminating maybe chemicals or products in your food. And well, there's no real evidence in that. Here's what you should follow. Well, there's not going to be evidence in that. There's going to be associative information that we have. Right. But, the concept. Exactly. Well,
I run into that a little bit, with the mouth tape. And, I'll talk to physicians, and then I'll talk to PhD, different scholars I'll talk to. Then I'll go to a dentist. I'll go to an ENT. And what's funny is I'll get from a mouth tape perspective, like there's no data to support directly that this piece of tape over your mouth has a positive impact on your sleep a lot of biomarkers. But I'll go to each different one, and it's like, we understand the power of nasal breathing as an ENT or an MD. And then I'll go to the dentist, and they're like, well, when your mouth is open, the microbiome and the acidic levels of the mouth really impact like the microbiome of the entire system. And so conceptually, it's like, all this makes sense, but since there hasn't been this exact study that duplicates this modality, all of a sudden, we can't say that. And it's like, but everything innovative starts with like conceptually piecing together things, right? Like anything that's changing the thought process at one point was just an idea of how people are taking other data points and thinking of a different way to think about things or piecing them together in a different way. So I think, I'm a data-driven guy. Obviously, I'm not a physician, but I love reading through things and studies and those things. But in the same breath, it's like we also need to use our brain and piece these things together and understand, like think about it, like outside the box, what's happening. Now, hopefully we get the studies to back that up and reassure what we're looking at. But I run into that same frustration. And I think that happens at every level,
Absolutely.
I feel like we're going through that same thing with POP, and we have been. Like, there were actually 37 studies done in Japan and Europe that recovery systems and preparation recovery systems actually they worked for surgery and stuff. But we were the first ones to put the steps together that turned out to be 3,643 steps, and then patent that intellectual property. And I got to give props to my mom, who's data driven like you, and kind of put it all together. But it's incredible how, I looked and I was like, wait a minute, you guys have been sitting on this information the whole time. Why are you looking at me like I'm crazy when you know that this is happening? And the other thing I want to say is, so I actually had a sleep vacation just the last 24 hours. I flew overnight and I had a doctor's appointment this morning. I actually got NAD for the first time today.
How did you get it?
I got an IV.
Ooh, how'd that feel?
I puked everywhere.
Yeah.
I made it through the first 45 minutes. And then she's like, oh, there's only a little bit left. Like, do you want to? I was like, yeah, because I really need to get out of here. And she's like, okay. She drives it. And I'm like, wait. It looked like Exorcist. It was terrible. But after that happened, I felt fine. But before that, I slept from 4 p.m. to 9 a.m. straight. And I woke up like a new person, but I do not get what do you say is the most optimized amount of sleep that you should get on a daily basis?
Well, I mean, it's pretty agreed upon in the medical world that 7 hours is the minimum. And I say that, and then everybody's like, okay, I got to get 7 hours. I'm like, no. Minimum meaning that's the least amount you should get.
Right.
Right. So, but they did a couple studies last year. Harvard did one. They did one in Japan, and what was cool is I think 30-ish was the average age, but they took them to the lab, and they basically for 2 weeks allowed them to. They didn't have any contact with the outside world, didn't know what time of day it was, and they were able to sleep as long as they wanted, up to 14 hours. And they found that the average, optimal sleep in the sleep space that just means how long would your body sleep if wake itself up on its own, essentially. And it was a little over 8.5 hours was the average. So it's actually longer than previously thought. But what was interesting was the average amount of sleep. Most of the people in the study were getting over 7 hours of sleep when they went into the lab. In the first 2 days, everybody averaged over 10 hours of sleep, meaning they were chronically underslept going into it, even though they were having, over 7 hours of sleep. So that as they got acclimated to the environment, there were people that needed more. So, if that's the average, that 8.5 mark, that meaning there's some people that need less, but there's some people that might actually need more. And I think that right now, culturally, if you're someone that's like, I need 8.5, I need 9 hours, people are kind of there's still a little bit of this culture of that's lazy, that's selfish, blah, blah, blah. But, I think in my life, I'm not trying to live the most hours of life. I want great hours. Right? I want the highest quality. I want to be in the best mood. There's nothing better than feeling good physically, right? That's what I'm looking for. Give me 15 hours of feeling awesome as opposed to 19 of feeling crappy. Right? That's kind of how I look at it. And then for the people around you, I think people we're gonna pin this in this whole being selfish, but think about how much better of a friend, a parent, a brother, sister, whatever it is, a boss you're going to be when your mood is regulated, you have energy. It's the least selfish thing you can do.
Well, I mean, like you said, many times people perceive sleep as lazy, or sleep as you're not out there going after what you're trying to achieve. And they ignore the fact of how effective are you trying to achieve something if you're sleep deprived. I remember when I first got my Whoop, the most disturbing thing was my sleep. I was like, holy cow, I cannot get even in the green.
You have a couple of drinks and it really goes crazy.
It changed my perspective of just having a drink with dinner or a couple drinks in the evening. I'm like, I don't even want this. I that's when I first would when I was out with people and I'd just get a soda water and a lemon and lime. And I'm like, I'm just going to sip on this and I'm going to converse, but I'm going to see how I feel the next day and what my Whoop says. Yeah. And it's a game changer.
What is a Whoop?
This little thing. It just measures it measures your, it's basically high tech. It's like an Apple Watch, similar sensors, but what they do is, heart rate, HRV, they just take these biometrics, but what they've done an amazing job is they make them, it's very digestible and user friendly. So it basically gives you this score, 1 to 100, green, yellow, or red, of your readiness score. So it kind of takes the averages of all these different markers like heart rate, resting heart rate, and gives you an idea of how well you slept and how ready you are to perform on a physical level. But I've worn one for 7 years. What's cool about it, which I really love, it's interesting because some people get really obsessed with it. Like with athletes, we have them actually take off their Whoop or their Oura Ring 3 days prior to competition, because you don't want to get in the habit of waking up, looking at a number, and letting that number dictate how you feel or perform, right? Like, it's not mentally. But what it's really cool for is like, if you get a new job, you have a kid, you start a new exercise routine, when you look at the data, like the monthly summaries, and you look at the yearly summaries and different changes in your life, or maybe you implement a new diet, you start to focus on your sleep more, you stop drinking. Like, you can really see on a macro level how it impacts your health in this, like, this tangible data. And it's pretty wild. Like, you know, I don't think people realize how much stress impacts their life. And that this sounds so cliche, but like, I remember there's a time that I changed jobs, and I was just not happy for like 6 months because some of the people I was around and stuff. And, you know, on paper, my diet wasn't much different. Nothing really changed that much except that. But my stress levels, right, just from being around people that I didn't really, didn't reflect the same values as me. And it had a massive impact on my biometrics. And I think that's really cool when people can get a handle on, like, you know, it brings a lot of awareness to their emotional EQ and like what you're feeling and emotion, and how it's actually, like, people don't just often associate how, like, you're physically being impacted with how you feel. And it kind of ties those together.
Wow.
Yeah, it's eye-opening, you know, and you can see your level of recovery. You know, you can kind of gauge how much can my body take today versus do I need to take it a little easy today, or am I full go? And what I think was the biggest thing I took away from it is when I felt like, okay, today I can do the workout I want to do, but my body wasn't recovered, not because I had worked out so hard the day before. I had not had enough sleep and total recovery to be able to handle that. Now, you know, it's up to me if I want to go ahead and do it or not, but it's really interesting to see that. I think, you know, as doing what I do, I tell people all the time, like, think of all the things that you invest in your life, like everything from a streaming service to taking an amazing trip or vacation to buying a car or a house that you've always wanted to have. Like, how often do you look at investing in yourself as serious? You know, I'll hear people on a daily basis really argue over, should I spend $1.50 a day on a really well-proven multivitamin when I can get one for 60 cents a day at Walmart? And I'm like, do you really hear? And I don't ever want to put myself in people's financial situations, but like, think of, like, I always say, this is the only vehicle you're ever going to get. Like, if you don't invest in this and it's gone, you don't get another one. You don't get to lease another one. And I think sleep is such an important component of that.
Well, sleep, I'm often dumbfounded by sleep because, like, when we think about behavior changes and things that have a positive impact, like, working out is hard, right? It sucks. It's difficult. Eating well is hard, right? Like,
it's nice hearing guys like you say that too.
Yeah,
right?
no, for sure. It's difficult. And it's like, this stuff is difficult. Sleep is like enjoyable. It's easy. It's free. It's like every part of it, minus that it might take a little time away, like, is best case scenario. And it's funny because, you know, when people want to go on a weight loss journey, right? It's like, it's the first thing they think of. Like, it's like so cliche. I want to get up before work and I'm going to work out. The two hardest things, start a new diet, right? All these things where if you just maybe focus on your sleep, you know, you're going to consume less calories because you're resetting your hunger hormones. You're going to have more motivation, right? You're actually going to, like, retain more muscle mass and lose more fat. And it's enjoyable. Yeah, right. We want to go after and attack the things that are the highest rates of failure and the most difficult on our mental and in our body. You know, so it's like, I just don't understand the thought process of, like, why are we attacking the things that are going to make everything more difficult? Losing weight is already difficult, right? It's already very hard. So let's start with the thing that's going to make everything a little bit easier and prime our body to do it. But that is not the culture.
It's not. You know, as a physician, I was never in primary care, but I remember in medical school, you know, when you just learn basic virology, bacteriology, treating infectious diseases, and the old adage that we all are familiar with, whether you're in medicine or not, is the mother takes the child into the pediatrician. He or she has a sore throat and a runny nose. you know it's viral, but you give the mom an antibiotic, because if you don't, the mom's going to go to the next doctor down the road because she feels like you didn't treat her child. And you end up treating the parent and not the patient. Or more importantly, you instead of treating the problem, you treat the patient. Right? To make them feel like you're treating it. And I think what you're alluding to is very similar. We want something that we think is really going to change something that we feel. We're not patient enough to say, if I do X, Y, and Z, I'm a big habits person. If I do these things, the longevity of it will pay off, because you invest in a supplement that we all three may know is very, very effective, and a month goes by, but if the supplement's supposed to make you live longer, you're like, okay, is this really working? And you stop, right? But if someone told you, Laura, and when you get an NAD infusion, every time you vomit, you've added 2 years onto your life, you'd puke your brains out on a weekly basis, right? Because you feel like you're seeing that result. And so just doing these basic things that doesn't really cost a whole lot, that invests in our bodies, it's really hard to get people to understand and invest in. They would rather go to something that they actually have to consume or pay for because they think that's the only thing that works. And it's crazy.
Yeah, it's so hard. Like it's funny because like with Dream, my company, that's why all I do is talk about education, and you'll rarely even hear me talk about our products, because we're kind of fighting this battle of, the more we can educate people, the more they get them bought into that train of thought and actually make them believe it. I think eventually that pendulum shifts, but it really because to some level, when people are doing that, it's making the statement they don't fully believe in what they're hearing, right? Like, they believe in getting up and doing cardio and getting on the stair climbers working. So I think we just have to forge ahead and just hammer the education and eventually get people to realize that, that train of thought might be detrimental. It might actually be keeping you further away from your goals. And let's reprioritize these things to make it, one, the highest chance that you succeed, and two, the least resistance throughout the process.
Yeah, I think that's so important because the last maybe 6 months have been really stressful. So I hadn't been getting as much sleep. But right after we met, I had made it a point to start going to sleep around 8:30, and I'd wake up around 5 or 5:30 with it. And so my friends would make fun of me because I was going to bed with the kids. But, I felt really good. But then, stress.
So when you get stressed, why does that take away from your sleep?
Because I would stay up later thinking that I could just overwork and overcompensate with administrative work and ideas and all this to try to supplement what I felt like we were losing. You know what I mean? I get that sometimes I'll be like, okay, well, we need more ideas. We need more innovation. And, I get this idea.
Ideas,
right.
Not more.
Right.
That's the difference.
Yeah. And then I'm getting less sleep. And I think I was up to maybe only 6 hours of sleep the last, 60 days or so. And I was really starting to feel it. And that's why I kind of did this reset sleep. Like my husband was going to come out and hang out with me and then take me to the clinic. But I was like, you know what, let me just sleep because I think I need sleep. I don't think that me overworking or trying to overcompensate with activity is going to fix anything. I just need to rest, And so I do feel a lot better today. And now I didn't even put together that. I know I messaged you and was like, see you. But it was after I put together that we'd probably be talking about this.
Yeah.
So it was a reminder that I probably need to get more sleep again.
I'm going to challenge you.
Okay.
Because, obviously being a business owner too, I totally can relate to some of the stresses. But, I do think when you look at the science and everything, it's even though you might work less hours, if you prioritize sleep, you will be more impactful in those hours. You will do more. Your total body of work will be higher if you're taking care of yourself, even though you might be plus 10 hours of work staying up later. And it's going to be very difficult to buy into that. But there's tons of stuff to support that. So I just think that, like, you know, you got, when you start factoring in mistakes, and maybe there's times where your emotional stability or, you know, clarity is off and you're having to change, you know, when you tally all that up, you know, I bet you'd actually come out net positive if you stuck to that bedtime.
You never have to deal with emotional stuff, Eric.
Trust me, Todd, I am willing to help invest in her sleep.
No, you can't say it though. I'm the one that has to tell
for
you.
the benefit of all of us. Trust me, I was letting you go through what you've been through, Laura, and I'm like, man, I'm just biting my lip. I'm not going to pipe in right now.
I can say it though, because I'm a neutral. Yeah. I'm a neutral party. So you can't get that mad at me.
No, it's true, and you know, you admire people that want what they're trying to achieve that bad. Yeah. I'm the same way, and I've suffered from that at times as well. And I was reading that recently about your productivity of when you are well rested. It doesn't matter if you've got, and you hit the nail on the head, Todd, you don't have to have 1,000 ideas, but you want the few that you have to be good ones. Yeah. And you're not spinning your wheels for multiple hours. You're actually doing very focused work for a lot less hours. And, you know, I set a goal for myself, and I get up pretty early with my job and have to be in the OR, but I just set a goal for myself at the end of last year that I wanted to kind of join the 5 a.m. club. I just wanted it to be standard. Not, well, I'm in the operating room, I got to get up at 5 a.m., but it's an office day, I don't have to get up at 5 a.m., or it's a weekend, just it's a 5, you know, and I've got some things that I want to accomplish when I get up for that first hour. And
you have 8 a.m. cases, or what time do you start?
So technically 7:30, but we usually cut around 8 a.m. You know, I'm usually at the hospital right around 7:30, but I want to have that 60 minutes kind of to myself, to have a little bit of quiet time or meditation, time to exercise, and usually just try to read something. You know, it might be a quick little summarized book on, you know, Headspace, or, you know, a chapter in a book on Audible or something like that. And there's definitely, I'm not perfect. Nobody is. But I realized in order to feel like getting up at 5, I had to be well rested. It's one thing to say I want to get up at 5 o'clock every morning, but I can't watch that ball game I really want to watch. Yeah. That Monday night football game that ends so late, you know, or that 9 p.m. basketball game that ends so late, you know?
Yeah, it's hard. I think sometimes because I talk about sleep, people think I'm like against the 5 a.m. club. Mm-hmm. But I definitely value discipline, doing things that are difficult, sticking to routine, proving to yourself you can do things like that. It's just carve out your sleep first, and you know, it's totally fine to be.
I had to make that adaptation. I had to get to bed earlier. People
misconstrue that message. I say that sometimes, or it's flipped in the wrong spot and they like take it the wrong way.
Exactly.
But, it's. I think that stuff is super valuable. It's just piece that sleep portion in first, and then figure it out on the back end, where sleep is normally picking up the pieces and the first thing that gets left out. And then all of a sudden sleep just has the leftover of all the stuff you're trying to do throughout the day.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, Todd, I want to pick your brain about a couple things, because, you know, this is what you do. It's sleep.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on a couple things? What's your thoughts on caffeine? Because I know this is a question people want to know, and not just caffeine, but timing of caffeine. Yeah. And if you were to say, and you can talk about your supplements or your program, but just very big picture, if someone says, okay, yes, I'm going to get on your website, I want to read about your program, but give me 3 big ideas for the listener out there of what I should start looking at to prioritize my sleep. Very basic changes, the easy wins that they can get at the beginning.
Yeah. So the first question was
caffeine.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I think caffeine gets demonized sometimes in relation to sleep. The one thing caffeine does really well is not make you feel tired. You know, I think sometimes people think it gives you a ton of energy, when in all reality, what it does is actually prevent you from feeling tired. Right. So, I think it's just intentionality. And when you're having it, you know, I think the half-life is substantially longer than people realize, you know, 5 to 6 hours. So thinking about, you know, just realizing caffeine is going to stick with you and linger, you know, just to like kind of put it in perspective. If someone's going to have 300 milligrams, well, first off, also caffeine is like, there's some great benefits, neuroprotective, like all the studies, most of it is positive in the 200 milligram range. But, if someone's going to have 300 milligrams of caffeine, let's say in a day, which is a pretty standard, I would say, American amount, and one has it at 8 a.m., and then one has 3 cups of 100 milligrams spread out at 8, 11, and 2. The difference is the person that had it at 8 a.m. might have 15 to 20 milligrams in their system at 10 p.m. when they go to bed. The person that spread them out is going to have 80 to 90, which is the same as drinking a Red Bull at 10, 11 p.m. So it's the same amount of caffeine or coffee. It's just having it front loaded in the day. So if you're going to do it, I think it's having it earlier. But then I think the other thing is it's a potent tool to not feel tired. So, sometimes with athletes, or if you have something where, let's say, it's worth detrimenting your sleep for one night. Like, let's say you have to, I don't know what reason, drive super late into the evening and you need to be alert. Like, there's times like save caffeine in your back pocket for when it's going to be useful, because it's really useful for that stuff. Don't just consume it because you feel like you're supposed to, because oftentimes in the afternoon, people think it's going to give them energy, but really all it does is, block some of those chemicals that makes them feel tired. And then they just can't sleep, but they also don't have more energy. They're just kind of in this no man's land. And so I think a lot of it is psychological. So I'm pro caffeine. It's just be intentional about having it in the morning. Yeah.
Well, me with coffee, my mom has had this thing for the last 25 years, that if she drinks tea or coffee, she gets irritable. Like, you can't be around her. It's really bad. So I just realized me too. It just started happening. And when I was in Vegas, there's some
genetic components with caffeine metabolism. Some people are super sensitive. I am. I'm speaking from my personal experience too, and I've done some genetic testing. And then some people can just hammer it and doesn't even impact them. Yeah,
my husband, he drinks it all day. Like, it's like that. But he's Mexican too. I don't know if that has something to do with it. The Coca-Cola and the caffeine. He just does it like
Mexican Cokes. Yeah. And then I guess with the, supplement side, I mean, my 2 favorite supplements, my favorite supplement for sleep is, obviously magnesium, magnesium 3 and 8 is pretty awesome. I tend to shy away from supplements just because I love to talk about the behaviors and this feeling of restfulness and surrounding the bedroom and relaxation well before a supplement, because I just think that train of thinking oftentimes always ends up leading to medication, melatonin, all these quick fixes. But I think things like magnesium, some of the chamomile extracts like apigenin can be great. It's regular supplements. I take creatine. I've been taking creatine for a long time. It's, it seems to be net positive. Every single thing that comes out seems to be better and better and better. And then I do some high dose omegas, omega 3s. And that's pretty much all I do is magnesium and those 2. And I do a multivitamin from Momentous. But I think as far as sleep specifically, I think understanding what the biggest thing is understanding what you're trying to do. And if there was one thing that's the most impactful across the board, it's having a consistent bedtime and wake time. If you can stay within 30 minutes on both ends, 7 days a week, right, then you're going to be in a much, much better place. And it's also easier to manipulate. Like if you're consistent and you want to gradually add a little bit more time, that's a lot easier than if you're all over the place and you try to go to bed super early. We've probably all been there where you lay in bed and can't fall asleep because your brain's just not quite ready for it. So that, and then I think the other piece is the psychological side of you really need your bed to be a place of calm and peace and restfulness. So it should be used for two things, sleeping and one other thing, right? Those are the only 2 things.
I was about to say, so does that mean you don't do the other thing?
That's it. Hopefully, and that shouldn't be very restful. That should be pretty high energy. But
sleep after.
Yeah, exactly. But it needs to be sacred. And so I think that sometimes people they go to bed and they start worrying about not being able to sleep and thinking about what they have the next day and thinking about the business, this, that, and the other thing. That's going to happen, but exit that space, because your body is really good. Your brain's really good at associating environment, different smells, different places, body positions, all these things with, that gets ingrained in memory. And the more and more you feel anxious in your bed, the less and less that becomes a place of peace and restfulness. And so you want to exit that environment when you start having those feelings, because the last thing you want to happen is your body and brain start attaching those things or associating those things, and you immediately start having those thoughts the first thing when you enter your bed. And the more it needs to be a sacred place. And I think people don't often think about the mindset of that. And people think about what temperature to be, all these different protocols. But at the end of the day, how you feel surrounding sleep is actually more impactful than any of those, hard pressed actual hacks.
I have this conversation with Anna all the time. We'll be sitting in the living room. We'll be watching a movie or something on Netflix or a ball game. And as she starts to get tired, she'll be like, "You want to go in the bed and finish watching this?" I'm like, "No, I want to watch it right here because I want to go to bed and lay down and go to sleep." She's like, "Let's just go to the bed and watch this." And then all you do is you fall asleep with that. And I think mentally I'm like, I want to be upright. If I want to be awake and watch something, I want to be paying attention to it.
Right.
And then I want to go and change my environment. So now I can tell her that the expert actually said that I'm onto something.
Yeah. Just blame it on me. I'll take all the heat.
We don't watch TV in our room at night anymore for the last year and a half, just because also it was like, I don't want to fall asleep with that.
Well, you don't really sleep anyways, right? So it doesn't matter.
But also I've gotten better. I had gotten better. Just like when I go in the bed, within 15 minutes, I'm sleeping, because so I don't know about you, Eric, but I am making a commitment to get more sleep. Like I was going to do some. I know you are. It's partially because you're saying it too. Yeah. And now you have a reason to check in on me. Yeah. But
I got you.
I think it's important. And I think
Todd, I'm all for her getting more sleep.
Yeah. Eric actually slipped me $100 before.
No, you know what? I'll take that pact with you, even though I'm not near as cranky when I'm sleep deprived as Laura is. I definitely know that she tells me how old I'm getting, so I know that that's important. But no, I think I definitely think that that's something. We all say we want to practice what we preach, and as we learn the importance of it, unfortunately, as a physician, we're usually the first person we neglect. Like we are so obsessed with, we put ourselves last. Unfortunately, sometimes we put our families last because we want to take care of all the other people that are depending upon us. Our intention is good, but you eventually realize how effective can I be in helping other people if I'm not in the best shape that I can be in, both physically and mentally. And I do realize that if I work more hours, am I really helping more people? Or can I help people more effectively if I'm in the best shape that I can be in?
I think the physician. I mean, it's just what you guys go through. It's just I don't even think people understand the demands that take place, and it's reflected in some of the mental health stuff, and some of the, people have physicians struggle, and it's and it's kind of sad because I think. The reason people do that, it's usually pretty selfless, and it's usually pretty incredible people. And I think I don't want to say taken advantage of, but like the willingness to do whatever it takes to get to that point. And a lot of people, when you're wired that way, you're not going to say no if you're able to help more people and do this and that. But like you said, I just think there needs to be more of a shift in taking care of. Physicians are such a massive value. And they should be protected with the system around them. And I just, when you look at like airline pilots, for example, there's just, it makes sense, but there's a lot of build outs and things to really, and I don't see why it's not the exact same situation.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and it's so true. And I do want to clarify some of the conversation we had earlier. I am a physician, but I can tell you 99% of those physicians that are saying, I'm going to treat you with this medicine, their intent is good. Their heart is in the right place. They're trying to help people. It's based on what they've been taught and how they've been trained. And for those people out there in the world that think that physicians are making money for writing prescriptions, that is an absolute freaking joke. That doesn't happen. It not only is it illegal, but no physician makes more money for writing scripts. Laws went into place years ago to even prevent that. They're doing what they think is best. I just think we're at a place where we all need to be able to sit back and reevaluate some of these things. I think it would be nice if we could give access to patients some of the non-conventional, which really shouldn't be considered non-conventional, but the non-conventional things of resources, of ways to eat good, whole, healthy foods, have resources to be able to get adequate sleep, good access to mental health. And doesn't mean, well, we'll give you a therapist once a month for free, of really digging deep in their behaviors. I think we could make our world a healthier place for sure.
I had this, I actually got into, not a argument. It was more of a debate. There's a couple docs and people, and we were talking about like this same concept of treating people and looking at the population as a whole. And some of the obviously GLP-1s came up, and there were a lot of conversations about people need to exercise and sleep and this and that, and I was like, I understand I agree with you, but the reality is, this conversation's been happening for the last 15 years, and it's not changing. It's getting worse.
Right.
And so some of like you were saying, like some of these outcomes and the medications, it's like, well, if you really need to make change and elicit change in the population, you have to treat what's willing to be done and the behaviors that are actually happening. And there's, you can see how those type of drugs do come into play. And so it's like that balance of introducing some of those, like, the holistic behaviors and giving them access to stuff, but then, educating them, allowing them access, and then going down that path. But it gets really hard when you're trying to have the highest percentage of success, because behavior change across the board for anything seems to be very, very difficult population wide.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's wild. So I don't know necessarily what the best route is, but it's not easy. And I think physicians are literally firsthand in that battle every single day of like, I can recommend all these great holistic things, but I've seen people fail 99 of 100 times.
Right.
Do I just jump to the thing I think is going to work? It's so hard.
Exactly. It's a balancing act. Laura and I talk about this all the time. This is why we believe so much in POP. And POP provides so many things to patients and to physicians. And how physicians can run their practices and how they can provide support to their patients. But if I had to pick one thing or one little component out of POP that is so vital that we do that no one else does, it's the mental health aspect. And yes, I can apply it to what I do as a bariatric surgeon. But the best example I can give, and you really alluded to this earlier, I can tell a patient how to eat. I can tell a patient what vitamins to take. I can tell a patient some things to follow that if they'll just do it day in and day out, I know for a fact they will see adequate results, or they will be pleased with the results that they get.
Yep.
The problem is the disconnect between knowing what you're supposed to do and actually doing it.
Yeah.
And for years, I used to watch during my training if a patient's not eating the right way. And they admit, many people are like, I'll be honest with you, like I'm having a tough time eating the right way or eating healthy. What do? They send them to the dietitian. They go over the list again, and I'm like, this is not a dietary issue. This is a mental health issue.
Right. Yeah.
Mental health is that disconnect between knowing what we should do and finding a way to put it into action, whether it's making it a habit, seeing the importance of it without instant gratification, but knowing the value. And I think so much of this is mental health. And I think it scares people because they're like, well, I'm not depressed. I'm not anxious. I'm not crazy, because that's what we've always associated with mental health. But really sitting down individually, because all three of us function very differently, of like, what are those triggers that I need mentally to say, okay, I finally put this into action? Because we have so many things we've proven if they're put into action, they work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also so wild. I don't think people recognize either. Like those people that are having a tough time in eating, they also they also want nothing more than to be successful in it. It's not like they're like,
they don't want to be there.
No.
Right.
And I think that a lot of people don't have empathy for the fact that like you said, like their brain is wired in a way that it's statistically near impossible to get out of the cycle they're in. So I think that's part of it too, is like, until someone's been in that position, I think it's very difficult to understand the magnitude in which it takes, and the amount of effort it takes to overcome some of these, these wants from a brain perspective. And like, yeah, I don't know. I just think empathy goes along. I think it's the people who have never been in that situation. It's like, you just need to do the right stuff. And it's like, I don't think that person would do anything not to be dealing with that. And I don't think that people think that when they're looking at someone dealing with a weight problem, for example. They're thinking like, oh, they just don't want it enough. And that could not be further from the truth most of the time. Absolutely. But it's how do you leverage, like you were saying, how do you leverage mental health piece and what they care about in a way that's sustainable? And honestly, I don't think anybody's really solved that problem in a big way.
Not yet.
We're getting there. We're getting there. We're gonna get there. But that's what's wild is like, I have seen, like, even though I'm like, this is still not in my lane, but the GLP-1 or some of that stuff, like it does get the ball rolling, right?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Like some of that stuff or some of those directions, it's like it gives someone a chance where, like, I've seen people struggle for 10 years, and some of those interventions, it's like at least they can create some momentum sometimes.
Yeah, for the longest time, I think the older bariatric surgeons, they looked at patients and they expected them to have everything in order before they would operate on them. And I'm like, first of all, if it was that easy, why are they coming to us? And the second thing is we are all motivated by visible results.
For sure.
And like you said, sometimes just giving someone a chance to where they get the confidence, they see the changes, they feel how much better they feel.
They can walk into the gym and not
then that contributes to the motivation to develop the habits to actually make exercise a regular thing, to prioritize healthy whole foods and prioritize retaining muscle mass. But like you said, it gets the ball rolling. Who cares which step comes first as long as the end result is the same?
Yeah,
so
it doesn't matter. As long as
everybody's different and everybody's unique.
For sure.
Well, I'm sold on the first step being sleep.
There we go. All right. Well, let's see it. Put your money where your mouth is. Let's see it.
All right.
I'm sold on that. Todd, thank you so much for joining us today. Could you please tell our listeners where they can find you on social media and your website?
Yeah.
We're going to link it, of course, but if you could tell us where we could find you.
Instagram, just Todd Anderson. I'm on there the most. And if anyone has questions, I try to get to them. But Dream Recovery is our company. We have some great sleep products. But I'm always happy to help if anybody has any questions.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being on. And as always, it's always great to see you. I feel inspired. I'm going to get more sleep.
There you go. Go to bed. Go to bed.
All right. Great to meet you, Todd.
See you guys.
We'll see you next time on Pop Culture Podcast.